The forbidden archives of the Galactic Confederation held many secrets, but none was guarded more carefully than the files marked with a red spiral, the symbol of the Soul Exclusion Zone. Ambassador Rila Voss had spent 40 years in diplomatic service. She had negotiated treaties between species that breathed methane and species that considered methane a weapon. She had prevented 3 interstellar wars through patience and careful words. Nothing surprised her anymore. Until today, she stood before the Council of Elders, her thin Hellari fingers trembling as she held the data tablet. Around her, representatives of 200 species waited in heavy silence. Many of them had never seen a Hellari show fear. The Kethvar swarm has taken the Meridian Cluster, she reported. 47 inhabited worlds. 18 billion lives. Gone. The chamber erupted in chaos. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages. Translators struggled to keep up. But one voice cut through the noise. Old Counselor Drevik, whose species had been founding members of the Confederation 12,000 years ago. Our fleets have failed, Drevik said simply. The swarm adapts to every weapon. They consume everything. We cannot stop them. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Rila had read the tactical reports. She knew the truth. The Confederation's military doctrine was built on careful calculation, on acceptable losses, on strategic retreat. The Kethvar understood none of these concepts. They did not negotiate. They did not fear death. They simply devoured and multiplied, an endless tide of chitin and acid blood. There is one option we have not considered, said a voice from the back. Every head turned. The speaker was Admiral Koth, commander of the Confederation's combined fleet. His scales had turned gray with age, and he walked with the help of a mechanical brace. But his eyes were sharp. The Soul Exclusion Zone, he continued. The humans. The reaction was immediate and violent. Species that had not agreed on anything in centuries suddenly found common ground in their horror. They are monsters, beasts who eat their own young. Deathworld savages. Rilla listened to the protests, but her mind was elsewhere. She had studied the old records, the real ones, not the propaganda taught in schools. The humans had been spacefaring once, 3 centuries ago. They had reached out to the Confederation in peace, and the Confederation had responded with fear. The founding species had looked at humanity and seen something that terrified them. Not the humans' technology, which was primitive. Not their appearance, which was unremarkable. What frightened them was something deeper. Humans came from a world that should have killed them. Their planet was covered in poison water, bombarded by radiation, shaken by constant geological violence. The gravity alone would crush most Confederation species. And yet humans had not merely survived, they had thrived. They had spread across their death world like a plague, adapting to every environment, conquering every challenge. The old records contained images of human history. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could burn cities to ash. Violence on a scale that made the Kethvar look almost gentle, but there were other images too. Humans risking their lives to save strangers. Humans building hospitals and schools in the ruins of their wars. Humans reaching across oceans to help those they had never met. The Confederation had not known what to do with such contradictions. So they had done what frightened civilizations always do. They had built a wall. The Soul Exclusion Zone. No ship enters. No signal leaves. Let the humans be forgotten. And for 300 years, that is exactly what happened. The humans faded from memory into legend, from legend into myth. Most young species had never heard of them at all, but Rila remembered. I will go, she said, and her voice silenced the chamber. Counselor Drevik stared at her. Ambassador, you cannot be serious. The swarm will reach the core worlds within 2 years. Our fleets are broken. Our options are gone. She met his ancient eyes without flinching. If the legends are even partially true, the humans may be our only hope. And if the legends are entirely true, if they are indeed the monsters we sealed away. Rilla considered the question carefully. She thought about the billions already dead. She thought about the billions more who would die while the council debated and delayed. Then perhaps, she said quietly, it takes a monster to fight one. The vote was close, but it passed. A small diplomatic vessel would breach the Soul Exclusion Zone for the first time in 3 centuries. Rilla would lead the mission personally to As she walked from the chamber. She wondered what she would find. Dead worlds, perhaps, the humans having destroyed themselves as so many had predicted. or primitive survivors. Their technology regressed beyond any use. Or perhaps, just perhaps, she would find the truth behind the legend. A species forged in fire and blood. A species that had learned to turn their violence outward. A species that had been watching the stars, waiting. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, for the first time since the war began, Rilla felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. The barrier fell behind them like a curtain of dying stars, and Rilla's small ship crossed into forbidden space. For 3 days, they flew in silence. The crew was terrified, and Rilla could not blame them. Every child in the Confederation grew up hearing stories about humans. They hid under the bed. They ate flesh. They felt no pain and showed no mercy. On the 4th day, the sensors detected something impossible: ships. Thousands of them, spread across the system in precise formation, their hulls dark and angular, built for a single purpose. "They see us," the pilot whispered. "Ambassador, they definitely see us." Rilla watched the tactical display as a dozen of the strange vessels broke formation and moved toward them. They were fast, faster than anything in the Confederation fleet. Within minutes, they had surrounded the diplomatic ship completely. The communication channel crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted human space. State your purpose or be destroyed." The voice was calm, almost bored, as if threatening to destroy a ship from the most powerful alliance in the galaxy was simply routine. Rilla stepped forward and activated the translator. "This is Ambassador Rilla Voss of the Hellari Dominion, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Confederation. We come seeking aid against a common enemy." Silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then a different voice spoke, older, deeper, carrying the weight of authority. "Ambassador Voss, I am Admiral David Okonkwo of the United Human Fleet. You will follow our escort to the diplomatic station. Any deviation will be met with immediate force." "Understood, Admiral. We are grateful for, save your gratitude. We have much to discuss." The channel closed. The escort brought them to a station orbiting the 3rd planet, the human homeworld. Through the viewport, Rilla saw Earth for the first time. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It looked almost peaceful from orbit, nothing like the death world described in the old records. But as she stepped onto the station, she understood that appearances meant nothing. The humans who greeted her were not the primitive savages she had expected. They wore clean uniforms. They moved with military precision. Their technology was different from Confederation designs, but clearly advanced, and their eyes held something Rilla had never seen in any species. A strange mixture of warmth and danger, kindness and violence, hope and pain. As if they had seen the worst the universe had to offer and simply refused to break. Admiral Okonkwo met her in a simple conference room. He was tall for a human, his skin dark, his hair gray. He looked tired, but his presence filled the room like a physical force. "You want our help against the Kethvar?" he said. It was not a question. Rilla nodded. "The swarm has consumed nearly 50 worlds. Our fleets cannot stop them. We are desperate. Desperate enough to come begging to the monsters you locked away 300 years ago." The words stung, but Rilla did not look away. "Yes." David studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to a display screen and activated it. Images appeared: Confederation military reports, refugee counts, battle footage. The humans had been watching everything. "We know about the swarm," David said. "We detected them 40 years ago when they entered this arm of the galaxy. We have been preparing ever since." Preparing. Rilla felt her stomach drop. "You knew billions would die, and you did nothing?" "We respected the boundary your ancestors drew. We stayed in our cage like good monsters." His voice was bitter, but controlled. "Would you have answered if we had warned you? Would your council have listened to beasts who eat their young?" Rilla had no answer. David softened slightly. "We will help you. But there are conditions." "Name them." "When the war ends, the exclusion zone ends with it. Humanity takes its place in the galaxy as equals. No more cages. No more legends. We become part of whatever comes next. I do not have the authority to make such promises." "Then find it, Ambassador. Because without us, there will be no Confederation left to give authority to anyone." Rilla thought about the burning worlds, the endless swarm, the terrified faces of the council. "I will make the promise," she said, "and I will keep it." David extended his hand. a human gesture of agreement. Rilla took it. His grip was warm and strong, and she realized that the stories had been wrong about so many things. Welcome to humanity, Ambassador. We have a war to fight. When the human fleet emerged from the Sol system, the Confederation observers fell silent in a way Rilla had never witnessed before. They had expected reinforcements. Perhaps a few hundred ships, older models, barely functional after 3 centuries of isolation. They had prepared speeches of gratitude, already planning how to integrate the primitive human forces into their own command structure. What they got was something else entirely. 3,000 warships poured through the transit point in perfect formation. Behind them came supply vessels, repair platforms, troop carriers, hospital ships. A complete military force, built in secret, waiting for exactly this moment. Admiral Koth, who had suggested seeking the humans in the first place, stood beside Rilla on the observation deck. His scales had turned pale with shock. "They have been preparing," he whispered. "For centuries, they have been preparing." "For what?" Rilla asked. "For this. For us." Koth turned to look at her with something like fear in his ancient eyes. "They always knew we would need them, and they never forgot what we did." The human fleet did not wait for Confederation approval to engage. Within hours of arriving at the front lines, they launched their first attack against a Kethvar swarm cluster. Rilla watched from a Helari cruiser, safely behind the battle line. What she saw changed everything she thought she knew about war. The Confederation fought with mathematics. Every engagement was calculated, every risk assessed, every retreat planned in advance. They preserved ships and crews, accepting small losses to avoid large ones. It was civilized. It was rational. It was nothing like what the humans did. Human ships flew into the swarm like wolves into a herd. They did not hold back reserves. They did not protect their flanks. They attacked with everything they had, all at once, accepting devastating losses to inflict even greater damage on the enemy. And when their ships were crippled, when any Confederation captain would order evacuation, the humans kept fighting. They vented atmosphere to extinguish fires. They sealed off entire sections to contain breaches. They fought with failing weapons and dying engines until there was nothing left to fight with. Then they rammed. Rilla watched a human destroyer, its hull torn open in a dozen places, accelerate directly into a Kethvar carrier. The explosion consumed both ships and everything around them for 1,000 kilometers. "They are insane," Koth muttered. "They are throwing away their lives." But Rilla was beginning to understand something the old admiral could not. The humans were not throwing away anything. They were trading, ship for ship, life for life. And in that equation, humans were winning, because they were willing to pay prices no other species would even consider. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Kethvar cluster was destroyed. Every ship, every drone, every organism reduced to burning debris. The human losses were terrible. Nearly 200 ships gone. Thousands of lives lost. But they had done something the Confederation had never managed. They had won a clean victory against the swarm. Rilla requested permission to board the human flagship, and Admiral Okonkwo granted it. She found him on the bridge, surrounded by exhausted officers. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with smoke. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a single day. "You won," Rilla said. "We always win," David replied, and there was no pride in his voice. Only weariness. "That is the human way, Ambassador. We do not know how to lose." "At what cost?" He looked at her with those strange human eyes, full of sorrow and determination. "Whatever cost is necessary. That is also the human way." A young officer approached with a data tablet. "Admiral, the casualty reports are coming in. 7,243 confirmed dead." David took the tablet and scrolled through the names. Each one, Rilla realized, meant something to him. Each one was not just a number, but a person with a story, a family, a life that would never continue. "Begin the memorial service," he ordered. "We speak every name before we sleep." The officer saluted and departed. "You mourn them," Rilla observed. "Even in victory. Victory without mourning is just murder with extra steps." David set down the tablet. "We fight like monsters, Ambassador, but we weep like saints. That is how we keep our souls." Rilla thought about the Confederation, with its careful calculations and acceptable losses. She wondered if they had ever truly mourned anyone at all. Between battles, Rila learned to understand the creatures she had once called monsters. The human flagship carried a library, not a digital archive, but an actual room filled with physical books. Paper and ink, fragile things that had somehow survived humanity's violent history. Admiral Okonkwo invited her there one evening, when the fleet was traveling between systems and there was nothing to do but wait. "Your people sealed us away because you were afraid," David said, pulling a heavy volume from the shelf. "But you never understood what you were really afraid of." He opened the book to an image of destruction, a city reduced to ash, shadows burned into stone. Rilla recognized it from the old Confederation records. A human weapon, so powerful it could erase everything in an instant. "We did this to ourselves," David continued. "Twice. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world, and we pointed them at our own cities." He turned the page. "And then we rebuilt. We mourned our dead. We swore never to repeat our mistakes, and we moved forward. But you kept the weapons." "Of course we did. Because we also learned that sometimes the only thing that stops a monster is a bigger monster." He closed the book and met her eyes. "The difference is knowing when to be which." In the weeks that followed, Rila observed human soldiers, human doctors, human engineers. She ate their food, which was strange but surprisingly delicious. She listened to their music, which stirred emotions she could not name. She heard them laugh and cry and argue, sometimes all in the same conversation. They were nothing like the stories though. They were violent. She watched Marines train in hand-to-hand combat, moving with a speed and brutality that made her stomach turn. She saw gunners celebrate direct hits with savage joy, and pilots volunteer for missions that were almost certainly suicide. But she also saw a medic work for 14 hours to save the life of a wounded Kethvar drone, not because it could be used for intelligence, but simply because it was suffering. She saw engineers share their technology with Confederation allies without asking for anything in return. She saw Admiral Okonkwo spend an entire night writing personal letters to the families of fallen soldiers. "You confuse me," she admitted to David one evening. "You are everything the legends claimed. Violent and unpredictable and dangerous. But you are also kind and generous and compassionate. How can you be both?" David smiled, that tired smile she had come to know so well. "That is the human condition, Ambassador. We contain contradictions. Every one of us carries both the capacity for great evil and great good. Every day, we choose which one to feed. And if you choose wrong, then we try to do better tomorrow. That is all anyone can do." Rilla thought about the Confederation. Her own people, the Helari, prided themselves on their rationality, their consistency, their predictability. They had eliminated most contradictions from their society long ago. They were peaceful, civilized, enlightened. And when the swarm had come, they had been helpless. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "contradiction is not a weakness. Perhaps it is a strength." David nodded. "The Kethvar are pure, single-minded, perfect in their way. They consume because that is what they are. They cannot change, cannot adapt, cannot choose." He looked out at the stars. "We are messy and broken and conflicted. We are never pure, but we can always choose to be something different than we were." A communication chime interrupted them. An officer appeared on the screen, her face grim. "Admiral, we have located the main Kethvar fleet. They are gathering in the sanctuary system. Intelligence estimates over 40,000 ships." David's expression hardened. 40,000. "Yes, sir. They appear to be preparing for a final assault on the core worlds." Rilla felt her heart sink. 40,000 ships. The combined human and Confederation forces had barely half that number. Even with human ferocity, the mathematics were impossible, but David did not look defeated. He looked thoughtful. "Then we ended at Sanctuary," he said quietly. "One way or another." He turned to Rila, and there was something ancient in his eyes. The look of a species that had faced extinction before and refused to die. "Ambassador, you wanted to know what makes humans different. You are about to find out." The sanctuary system had no planets worth naming, no resources worth mining, nothing but empty space and dying stars. It was the perfect place for an ending. Rila stood on the observation deck of a Confederation carrier, safely behind the battle line, and watched the largest fleet in galactic history assemble for war. Human warships and Confederation cruisers, Helari frigates and Drevik destroyers, vessels from 100 species that had never fought together before. Against them, the Kethvar waited. 40,000 organic ships, their hulls pulsing with alien life, their formation so dense it blocked out the stars. The swarm had never gathered in such numbers. They sensed that this was the final battle, and they intended to end it with total victory. Admiral Okonkwo's voice came through the fleet-wide channel, calm and steady. To all ships, human and allied, the enemy before us has consumed 47 worlds. They have killed billions of innocent beings. They believe they cannot be stopped. A pause. They are wrong. The human ships began to move forward, and one by one, the Confederation vessels followed. Today we teach them what it means to face humanity. Today we show them that some prey fights back. Today we remind the universe that darkness can be beaten if you are willing to pay the price. The fleets collided, and the universe dissolved into fire. Rilla had seen battles before, but nothing like this. Nothing could have prepared her for the scale of the violence, the speed of the destruction, the absolute chaos of 40,000 ships tearing each other apart. Human pilots flew directly into swarm formations, their weapons blazing until their ships came apart around them. Marine boarding parties fought hand-to-hand against Kethvar warriors in corridors filled with acid and smoke. Damaged vessels turned themselves into weapons, their final acts of defiance measured in enemy kills. And through it all, the humans sang that IT started on one ship, an old war song, its words carrying through the communication channels. Other ships picked it up, then more, until the entire human fleet was singing together. A chorus of defiance rising above the explosions and screams. Rilla did not understand the words. She did not need to. The meaning was clear enough. We are here. We are fighting. We will not stop. The battle lasted for 12 hours. Rilla lost track of the casualties. Ships vanished from the tactical display faster than she could count. Human, Confederation, Kethvar, all becoming the same debris, the same ash, the same sacrifice to the hungry void at some point. The tide began to turn. The Kethvar swarm mind was a collective intelligence, brilliant in its own way, but fundamentally predictable. It fought to consume. It retreated to preserve. It calculated acceptable losses and adjusted accordingly. Humans did not calculate acceptable losses. Humans did not retreat to preserve. Humans kept fighting long after any rational species would have surrendered, and their madness was contagious. Confederation ships that would have fled hours ago stood their ground, inspired by the humans beside them, and slowly, impossibly, the swarm began to break. Rilla watched a human destroyer, its engines dead, its hull burning, drift directly into the path of the largest Kethvar carrier. The last transmission from its captain was simple and clear. This is Captain Yuki Tanaka of the destroyer Defiant. Tell my son I love him. Ramming speed. The explosion tore through the carrier's core, and the chain reaction consumed everything within 1,000 kilometers. One by one, the Kethvar command ships fell. One by one, the swarm mind lost its coordination. One by one, the drones began to scatter, their collective will broken at last. When the final Kethvar vessel went silent, the survivors did not cheer. The human channels filled instead with a different sound. Names. Thousands of names, spoken in solemn remembrance. Every ship, every soldier, every life lost in the battle. It took hours to read them all, and no one interrupted. Rilla wept as she listened. She had thought she understood sacrifice. She had thought she understood courage. She had been wrong about everything. The humans had won. But victory, she realized, was never the point. The names were the point. The people behind them. The choice to fight and die so that others could live. That was what made humans different. Not their violence. Not their technology. Their love. 5 years after the Battle of Sanctuary, Rilla Voss stood on a balcony in the city of Nairobi and watched the sun set over the African plains. She was no longer ambassador to the Confederation. That title had been retired along with so many other relics of the old order. Now she carried a different name, one that still felt strange on her tongue. Ambassador to Earth, the first of her kind to hold such a position. The first of any kind. Behind her, the sounds of the reception drifted through open doors. Laughter in a dozen languages. Music that blended human instruments with alien harmonics. The clink of glasses and the warmth of friendship, forged in the fires of war and tempered by peace. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Sol exclusion zone was gone, its borders erased from every map. Human ships now traveled the trade routes. Human scientists worked in Confederation laboratories. Human art and music and literature spread to worlds that had never imagined such things existed. Some species still feared them. Some probably always would. But the fear was different now, mixed with respect, with gratitude, with something approaching understanding. Footsteps approached, and Rila turned to find Admiral Okonkwo joining her on the balcony. He was older now, his hair fully white, his face lined with the weight of years. But his eyes still held that strange mixture of warmth and steel that she had come to know so well. "Ambassador," he said, offering her a glass of something golden. "You are missing the party. I needed a moment." She accepted the drink and looked out at the horizon. "Your sunsets are beautiful. We have nothing like this on Helaris. We have many beautiful things. Many terrible ones, too." David leaned against the railing beside her. "That is the human curse. We can never have one without the other." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky transform from gold to crimson to purple. "I have been thinking," Rila said finally, "about what you told me during the war. That humans choose every day which part of themselves to feed, the good or the evil. I remember. Your people have been free for 5 years now. Free to travel, free to trade, free to do whatever you wish. Some in the council feared you would conquer, that you would take revenge for the centuries we caged you." David smiled, that tired, genuine smile she had seen so many times. "And instead we built hospitals, shared technology, helped rebuild the worlds the swarm destroyed." "Yes. What?" He considered the question carefully before answering. "Because the cage was never about you. It was about us. For 300 years, we had to prove, to ourselves, that we were more than the monsters the galaxy believed us to be." He sipped his drink. "Now we are free, and we still choose to build instead of destroy. That choice means something now. It means everything. But you could choose differently. Tomorrow, next year, a century from now, you could become the monsters again." "Yes." David did not deny it. "We could. We probably will, someday in some way. Humans are not perfect. We will make terrible mistakes. We will cause pain and suffering, even with the best intentions." He turned to face her directly. "But we will also recognize those mistakes. We will mourn them. We will try to do better. That is all any species can do, Ambassador. Try. Fail. Try again." The last light faded from the sky, and the first stars began to appear. Somewhere up there, human and alien ships flew side by side, carrying cargo and passengers and dreams across the void. "The legends were wrong about you," Rila said softly. "Were they?" "They said you were monsters from a death world. Savage, brutal, uncontrollable." She shook her head. "They did not mention that you would weep for your enemies, that you would die for strangers, that you would choose kindness when cruelty would be easier." David laughed quietly. "The legends were not wrong, Ambassador. They were just incomplete. We are monsters. We are also saints. We are everything the galaxy feared and everything it hoped for." He raised his glass toward the stars. "We are human. And now, finally, we are free to show the universe what that really means." Rila raised her own glass, touching it gently against his. "To humanity," she said. "To humanity," David echoed. "May we always choose wisely. And when we do not, may we always find the courage to try again." They drank together as the stars came out, and somewhere in the darkness between worlds, the legend continued. Not as a warning anymore, but as a promise.